What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Friday's undefeated post-weigh-in show, brought to you by Pub Sports Radio. My name is Clint. I am the host of the Die Hard MMA podcast, and these lines are brought to you by Superbook Sports. Smash that like button for me. We are talking one final look at these fighters. This was an awesome weigh-in. These face-offs were fun. I'm going to talk you through it, let you know what I saw, let you know my thoughts, see if we break out the tinfoil hat or not, and look at making some bets for tomorrow's UFC Vegas 55. Let's get right on into it. First fight of the night. Sam Hughes taking on Elise Reed. This was the first bet that I made on the entire card. I moved on Sam Hughes at plus 135 for 2 units. First, right off the bat, after watching the tape, no issues from either woman. Reed came in at 115, Hughes 115 and a half. No issues, both women relaxed. Hughes gave a solid flex. She looks like she's in great shape for this. When they face off, my girl Sam Hughes was smiling confidently up there, and she does have a decent little size advantage on her. That's one of the main key points for me here, is that this is maybe the first time in Sam Hughes' UFC run, not counting, Tisha Torres, who, nobody has the size disadvantage against Tisha Torres. She finally has a size advantage over a fighter in her proper weight class. Like, that's a big deal to me here, especially considering the way that she fights. Now, this line actually moved the other way. There was some love for Elise Reed. Sam Hughes bumped up to plus 145 for a bit there. If we got to plus 150, plus 160, I was actually going to add another unit on Sam Hughes because I feel like the market is just way too low on her at this point. However, the buyback happened. It ticked back down. We're sitting at plus 135, same as what I got a little earlier in the week at this point, and I still like it. I still like it a lot. I think Sam Hughes is kind of capitalizing on her new gym. She's capitalizing on the quick turnaround. She's got an opponent here that she might be able to out-muscle and bully, use that body lock the way that she likes to, grind away the clock, win some minutes. That's really how I see this fight playing out. I know a lot of people are saying that Elise Reed has a striking advantage here. I feel like that's a little strong. I don't know that she has a striking advantage. Sam Hughes has not really had the opportunity to really show what she's capable of, and working at Fortis MMA, she's at the right place. She's got a good coach. She's going to be improving, and I do think that considering she's got a size advantage, and I believe, again, a perceived strength advantage here, I think she'll just be able to kind of bully Elise Reed around a little bit, get a couple takedowns, some clinch time up against the fence. She should be able to scrape by with a decision win on this one. If she gets her to the ground, Sam Hughes unleashes that ground and pound. She's got some submissions on her. She could maybe get her out of there. I'm not banking on that, but I do think the money line is the way to go here. I'm already on it. First bet of the week. Team no hedge. Not really looking for an opportunity to hedge out of it or look the other way here. I still like it. Next fight up, Chase Hooper taking on Felipe Colares. Both men came in at 145 on the dot here. Chase Hooper, this kid's skinny as fuck. Up there, he looked fine, no issues. We know he's a tall, skinny string bean. Felipe Colares moving up from 135, has abs for days. This guy's ab muscles are ridiculous. He looked relaxed, obviously an easy spot for him coming up a weight class. Those extra 10 pounds helped him out. Chase is way taller when they faced off. Again, no surprises here. We knew that coming in. That's how this guy just is. He's fighting a guy who is coming from a smaller weight class, so he's gonna have a size advantage, and he's already a tall, lanky guy. So yeah, no shocks. Battle of the hats here, though. We've got Felipe Corrales rocking the cowboy hat. Hooper's got his hat on backwards. It was a good face-off, relatively respectful. This one should be fun. I did end up jumping on Chase Hooper. This is one that I've been looking at all week. I kind of leaned to Felipe Corrales just right off the top. No tape study earlier in the week. Did the tape study. Completely flipped to actually liking Chase Hooper. And that sense of Chase Hooper letting us all down is something I think that's holding us back here. We've all been on Chase Hooper. We all thought Chase Hooper was going to roll through some of his opponents. He seemed like he was coming in with some hype. His grappling was top-notch. Young kid, really putting it all together. When he gets your back, the ground and pound is nasty. But then he just kind of fell apart. They put him in a little too deep. Alex Caceres comes to mind. That was not a fight that he was ready for. He's taken a full year off. He's working with high-level gyms, coaches, training partners. I expect big improvements from Chase Hooper. And now we talked about how he's just kind of out-muscled and bullied by his opponents. This might be the one guy who he can out-muscle and bully around himself. He's got a large size advantage here, and he's taking on a guy who is comfortable fighting at 135. I'm not convinced after watching all the footage that Colares has a strength advantage over Hooper. Maybe he gets big brothered here. Maybe he gets kind of ripped around the octagon and dragged down to the floor. His jiu-jitsu and ankle locks can always bail us out. Chase Hooper by calf slicer. I do have a little sprinkle on that. It's like 1,000 to 1 or something on a site that I don't talk about on the show because we're sponsored by Superbook Sports, but I do have a little taste of that. I got 2 units on Chase Hooper, plus 155. It does look like the buyback is happening there. I see plus 150 as of now. He popped up to plus 160 a little earlier in the week. I was hoping I'd get plus 165 or plus 170. I missed out on the plus 160 because I was being a little greedy, hoping that number would tick up a little bit. So got the plus 155, 2-unit shot again. I'm happy for it. This is one that would really bother me if I have lost money on Chase Hooper and then I miss the boat when he finally gets the win that the UFC apparently looks like is set up for him. So I like Hooper here. Hopefully he can pull it off for me. Jonathan Martinez taking on Vince Morales. Martinez came in at 135.5, Morales 136. Martinez looked good. This is a guy that struggled on the scales at 135. We've seen him have issues weighing in before, and this was one I really was looking interestingly at because I was kind of hoping Jonathan Martinez would struggle a little bit on those scales today. He did not, though. He looked good. Vince Morales, slapping his chest, giving a solid flex. He looked good. He never really has any issues on the scales. And this was an intense face-off. These guys got in close on each other. Nobody was blinking. Slight size advantage for Vince Morales. This is a spot where I've been looking at Vince Morales all week. I talked about jumping on him before. I've been kind of hoping that number would drive up a little bit. It did peak up at plus 200. Again, that buyback is starting to happen. He's plus 195 right now. I may jump in. Jonathan Martinez has the kicking game that we know Vince Morales has struggled with. However, Vince Morales is a big, strong kid. He can probably walk through some of Martinez's striking offense, crowd the kicker, get into range, and we saw a much smaller man hurt Jonathan Martinez in his last fight. Perez was able to basically nuke him almost twice in that fight. If Vince Morales stays aggressive, we're in the small cage, that should help him out, help pin down the movement a little bit of Jonathan Martinez. If he cuts the cage off right, steps into boxing range, I think he's going to cause a lot of problems for Jonathan Martinez here, and I think that Vince Morales at plus 200, live dog, the knockout prop at 5 to 1, I'll probably taste that a little bit. Haven't bet that one yet. But yeah, first 3 fights of the night. I'm kicking off here with dogs, it looks like. Omar Morales taking on Uros Medic. Morales came in at 155.5, moving back up after his ill-fated cut to 145. Medic came in at 156. Morales looked filled out. That man gave a big flex, looking healthy on the scales today. Rejuvenated up at 155. Geez, plus 155. I got betting numbers on the mind, people. That's how it goes. Uros Medic came in at 156, and unfortunately the stream jumped. I wasn't able to watch him weigh in. They didn't catch that one on tape. I noticed he was wearing his sunglasses, though, which that's a no-no on this show. We do not approve of the sunglasses on the scales. However, he looked great. When they got to the face-offs, he looked fantastic. Physically solid. He took the glasses off for me, so maybe he's just pulling a Tony Ferguson on us, trying to look cool on the weigh-ins. But he stepped up on Omar Morales. This was a very intense stare-down. Morales wasn't going anywhere, wasn't having it. I'm very excited for this fight. On the podcast, I talked about thinking that Uros is a live dog here. Just 4th dog in a row here for me to start the card off. He's huge. Dude is big, but I also am concerned with him maybe being a bit of a glass cannon. You can take the fighter out of Alaska FC, but you can't necessarily take the Alaska FC out of the fighter, and that's kind of my concern here. I've always been a bit lower on Omar Morales than the market in general, so I feel like this is a spot where maybe I'm jumping a bit too quick to try to fade him, and the line seems short. For a guy that just went 15 minutes with Giga Chikadze, we're getting minus 140 on that. I'm passing because I think there's a very real argument to be made that there's value on Omar Morales at this buy low price tag, and Uros Medic, for a guy that's 0-1 in the UFC, getting plus 120 against a guy who just fought a top 5 potential challenger, this is short. This is very short, but he does have a significant size advantage. He does have a big explosive offensive game, so could he nuke Omar Morales early in round 1? Yes, he could. Omar Morales is a guy that's been tough. He's been durable. He knows how to mitigate damage. He also knows how to control the range very well, so I'm not convinced that Medic will just be able to nuke him in round 1, and then realistically, we have no idea what Medic looks like after that. Omar Morales could completely outclass this kid. Minus 145 could look like the steal of the year come Saturday. I'm uncomfortable. Don't have a great read on either guy because of it. I'm going to go ahead and leave this one alone. I think I'm going to flip my pick from Uros Medic to Omar Morales, simply given the fact that he has fought a much stronger level of competition in the UFC so far. Again, this price tag might be short. I don't think I'm betting it. Fireball and popcorn, baby. I'm just going to watch this one. Next up, the main event. Parker Porter taking on Jailton Almeida. And we got Parker tipping the scales at 265. Coming in at the max. Jailton Almeida came in at 224. There's going to be, as of right now, it's a 40-pound weight difference between these men. Now, we know Jailton Almeida cuts to 205, has no problem doing it. Parker Porter cuts to 265. This could be a 50 or a 60-pound weight difference come Saturday in the cage. I know I talked on the podcast about waiting on this one. Wait to see if Parker has any success in round one. Jump in live. I got a little antsy. I took one unit at plus 145, plus 450. I apologize. Took one unit at plus 450, and then I did sprinkle that split decision prop. You know I love my split decision props because it was 40-1. This is a spot where the entire fight is contingent on Parker Porter surviving the grappling exchanges and getting this fight deeper into the rounds where he has UFC caliber experience, where he has the high output, he knows how to win these fights. This one could be over early. I fully understand that. Jailton Almeida may be legit, and let me tell you, he looked bricked up today. He's a complete Adonis. When they face off, he's huge. It looks like the weight classes are reversed. Jailton Almeida is the 205er, Parker Porter is the heavyweight. It does not look that way when they face off. Jailton Almeida is far bigger than I gave him credit for. Like, I expected him to be the larger man up there. It was bigger than I anticipated it would be. He's huge. So he may not have an issue pushing Parker Porter around, but I do think he may run into a bit of an issue with not being able to get under Parker Porter's hips. We've talked about this before. It's been a bit since we've gone over it, but with the wrestling, you actually have a bit of an advantage being slightly smaller or the same size as your opponent. You can get to their hips better. With a guy like Parker Porter that's built the way he is all lower body. He is heavy. His hips are low. That's going to be a tough order for Jailton Almeida to get under him. Now, he may have the power and the strength to muscle this guy to the ground. I don't know if he can do it for 15 minutes. That's my big thing. I'm not convinced that Jailton Almeida can get a 265-plus pound man on the ground and take him there multiple times. If it hits the ground once, if he rear naked chokes him in round one, that's fully expected. I get that's probably the most likely thing that happens here. But Parker Porter is a BJJ brown belt himself. So if he survives on the ground in round one, can manage to get back up to his feet, we haven't really seen Jailton Almeida at the UFC level beyond that first round, things get interesting. I'm only telling you what I am betting. You do whatever the hell you want to with your own money. I took the shot. I got one unit plus 450 on Parker Porter and a quarter unit on that crazy plus 4,000 fight by split for Parker Porter. So I'm kind of hoping Jailton Almeida wins round one. Parker Porter survives, works his way back into it, and gets a 29-28 split decision victory. That would be a fun night for me. Next up, Joseph Ugly Man Holmes taking on Alan Amadowski. Holmes came in at 185, Amadowski 186. No issues whatsoever for Ugly Man. He's not really the most impressive physical specimen up there. Like, he's tall, he's lanky, he looked fine. I don't know if maybe he can make 170. He looks almost like like one of these guys that's a little too slim for the weight class. I don't know. His opponent, on the other hand, Alan Amadowski, he has not weighed in several years. It's been a bit. He was the last one on the scales today. Kept us all waiting, and I understand, like, that's got to be tough going from not ever having to cut that weight to, back to doing it at the professional level. He seemed very relieved when they read off 186 on the scales today. Now, we do know Holmes, again, another tall man situation. Size is the story of the weigh-ins and the face-offs today. Holmes had a decent little height advantage on him, but it's not as big as I expected. Alan Amadowski stepped in on him, and they actually are more reasonably sized than I anticipated. Amadowski looks amped up. Now, they kind of had to, separate him, and Alan had to, confirm that he wasn't actually going to, touch him or hit him or anything. He was like, I'm okay. He, patted Joseph Holmes' hands and arms for a second to let everybody know he wasn't going to get out of pocket. It was pretty funny. But this is a fight where I've just got fight doesn't go the distance. I lean Holmes. I think Holmes will get him to the ground and have some success grappling him, ground and pound submissions. I think that's the way this thing plays out more often than not. But the reason I'm big on the under or the violence bet is because Amadowski just has nukes in his hands. And we have seen Joseph Holmes get hit. We've seen him get hurt. Jamie Pickett had him on the ropes. If he's going to get KO'd by somebody, it's going to be one of these one-hitter-quitter type dudes. So Alan Amadowski, I think, is extremely live in round one. If he gets taken down, he's a fish out of water. It's been a couple years. Maybe he's improved that part of his game, but I think Holmes can tap him if this thing hits the mat. So I like violence here. I will lean on the Holmes side of things, but I will not be shocked if Alan Amadowski nukes him and does it early. I have a parlay on this one. Fight doesn't go the distance with the over 1.5. on the next fight. That's my biggest bet on the card. Eric Anders taking on Ji Young Park. Anders came in at 186, Park 185.5, and Anders looked bad on the scales today, folks. Sucked out, heavy eyes. He looked rough. This man is not built for 185, and it takes a lot to get him there. Ji Young Park, on the other hand, love this guy's energy. Big smile, goofing off, enjoying himself, always having a good time. Anders has a decent little size advantage on him here in this spot, but Park, he was just enjoying himself. Even at the face-offs, he was like making Anders laugh and giggle. So it was a good time. It was a good time. I am pretty confident on Ji Young Park here. Like, I know Anders has got this size advantage, but he tends to be relatively low volume. Ji Young Park is the Iron Turtle. He's a guy you don't knock out or finish, except when he completely drops his guard against a guy like Rodriguez. I think he's learned his lesson from that. Anders has talked about wanting to come out here and grapple for this fight after getting tapped in his last one. So I think we're going to see a lot of clinching, a lot of grappling, and the way that Ji Young Park works his jab, I just think Anders is going to struggle with the activity. I think he's going to struggle to close the range on the feet. Once he does, maybe he can bully this guy up against the fence. But I also don't really think Anders is going to one-hitter quitter Park. The way that he loads up on these big shots, I think Park will be able to see them coming, stay out of range. And if we end up in these ground scrambles, I wouldn't be shocked if Park wins some of them. Anders has a tendency of slowing down, especially in like the second and the third round. If he's wrestle heavy, we saw in his last couple of fights that he really... he kind of, in the rematch that he had, he struggled in that rematch after nearly killing the guy in that first fight. I'm totally blanking on his name. I apologize. The dude that got cut from the UFC. Darren Stewart, thank you. He really struggled in the rematch with Darren Stewart, and it looked like he was about to give away a decision going with that grappling heavy type of game plan. I think if he does that here in this spot, Park will be able to out-cardio him and outpace him. I'd be worried actually a little bit about a late finish or a submission from Ji Young Park later on in the fight. But he also talked in his interview about he loves fighting and he wants to be in there for a full 15 minutes because he enjoys it so much. Maybe that's why Park is the decision machine that he is. I got Park by decision, but like I said, the over 1.5 is the other leg of my parlay, and I've got a hard time seeing that one not hitting. So crossing our fingers for the big payday on the parlay. Polyana Viana coming up next versus Tabitha Richie. The internet is split on this one. Polyana 116, Richie 115. No issues whatsoever from either woman. Tabitha Richie much shorter, looking thick on the scales today. Significant size advantage here for Polyana Viana. I found out listening to the interviews that she moved out to Shoot the Box for this camp. That's going to be her new home, and honestly, I think that's an incredible move for Polyana Viana. She's got the right frame, she's got the right body type, she's got the right style. She reminds me of a female Charles Oliveira, obviously a much lower level, so don't think I'm like comparing her to the greatness that is Charlie O, but I just mean as far as how she functions. Jiu-Jitsu first, Muay Thai second, tall, lanky, long, uses that frame, not afraid to go to her back. It's a lot of what I see in Charlie O at a much lower level. So I think that they'll be able to do some good things with her moving forward. Whether or not she's made big enough leaps and improvements for this particular fight is kind of the question. If she stays there long term, though, I like the move. Richie very confident looking at the face-offs. This is a spot where, like I said on the Monday show, I'm extremely tempted on the dog here just one more time because we have got an underdog that I feel like should be the favorite. Tabitha Richie opened up at like minus 200 or something. It's been all steam on Polyana Viana leading up to this fight to drive this fight down to a pick'em price tag. Now there's a little buyback on Tabitha Richie since it's gotten this low. Minus 130 on Richie, plus 110 on Polyana Viana. I still kind of like Polyana Viana. I talked about this on the Monday show that if she hits, even money, minus 110 if the line flips. I can't get involved at that point. The value's all gone. I'm a bad gambler if you miss out on the plus 150 earlier on and then you lay minus 115. I can't stomach doing that. So now that it's bumped back up to that plus 110, plus 115 type of price tag, I kind of want to jump in on Polyana Viana. I haven't decided for sure if I'm going to or not, but I think she can win this fight. She's a finisher. I like that sub prop. It's 4-1 for her to win by sub. We've seen Tabitha Richie slip up and offer her arms up a couple times. I think it's on the table. This fight should be fun, should be scrambly. I'm interested. Just struggling to trust more low-level fighters. I've already got a couple bets on this card, and I don't want to sink my ship like I have the last couple weeks, piling on late in the week. But the one thing I've noticed lately is that my first thoughts have generally been the accurate ones, and Polyana Viana was the one that jumped out at me early. I just never ended up locking it in. So very tempted to make that one official. Chidi and Jaquani taking on Dusko Todorovich. And Jaquani came in at 185. Todorovich 185.5. Chidi very well muscled, looks solid on the scales today. Dusko Todorovic looked a bit soft to me, believe it or not, up there, actually. Chidi's got about a half a head height advantage on this one. We knew he was going to be the bigger, taller man. He always is. This was a very respectful face-off, and I'm leaving this one alone. Dusko's all the way up at plus 205 right now. Chidi's a minus 245 favorite. Everyone and their mother is on Chidi and Jaquani in this spot, and I just worry that Marc-Andre Barrios knockout was a bit of a fluke. We've seen Chidi struggle when he gets put on his back foot. We've seen him struggle when he gets put on his back on the canvas. I know a lot of people are talking about reinvigorated Chidi and Jaquani. My guest on Monday talked about the fact that he's enjoying life and training again. Those are all the types of things I love to hear. Those are the types of things that would lead me to put a bet on this man. However, I can't get the monkey off my back that I feel like this is just a reverse spot where it's a buy low on Dusko and it's a sell high on Chidi, because I'm not convinced that 33-year-old Chidi is suddenly not the man we have seen compete the last couple years. Dusko Todorovic, a guy that I have historically been looking to fade, he's proven to be more durable than I ever gave him really credit for. He's only been knocked out the one time, and he does have a decent ground game on him. He does have a decent wrestling game on him. He didn't look great against Maki Pitolo in his last fight, but it might be enough to cause some problems here for Chidi. I think this fight plays out maybe a bit closer than people are expecting. The thing I'd be interested in is the over 1.5. You know, Chidi getting that 13-second KO, I think, has opened the door for some value here. Over 1.5, minus 160. I think if Dusko comes in and looks to grapple, we end up in a lot of these wrestling exchanges. Both these guys get tired. Chidi does show some improvements. Maybe we spend some time in the clinch, but nobody gets quite knocked out. I think we could get over 1.5 for this one. So that's kind of the way that I'd be looking in this particular fight if I was going to bet it. Might not move on it at all, though, because I'm a little spooked on both guys. Dusko's a guy that I normally look to fade, and I don't necessarily want to line up behind him for this one. And Chidi's a guy that, while I did bet on him in his last fight, I feel a little lucky cashing that ticket, and that makes me a little bit nervous. That's just that hairs on the back of my neck gambler's intuition. Maybe he comes out and starches Dusko right away like everybody's talking about, and I'll just miss out on the opportunity. But at minus 245, you're not getting a bargain on that anyway. Co-main event time, Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Michel Pereira. Ponzinibbio came at 170.5, Pereira 170 on the dot. Ponzinibbio was all smiles on the scales today. He looked great. And as always, Pereira is shredded. This man is massive. He is all muscle. Somehow it seems like these 170 cuts are getting easier for him. He classifies as a Brazilian balloon for me. He shreds himself down. Usually he looks awful on the scales. Not today. Big smile on his face today. He still looks shredded on the scales, but then he blows up by fight time and has a massive size advantage in the cage. I have been going back and forth again on this one. Santiago Ponzinibbio, plus 120 underdog, minus 140 on Michel Pereira. I have been going against Michel a lot recently, and as you well know, that has not worked out. Michel Pereira just keeps on winning. The guy just keeps proving me wrong. The problem is, every single time I watch him fight, it's the same damn thing. It's close, because he's fighting risk-adverse. He's not going in there to knock people out. He uses his movement. He's on his bike the whole fight. He slightly outpaces and slightly outscores his opponents. He's hard to hit, but then come round 3, he's completely exhausted, and he gives up 10-8 rounds in the third, and he gets clipped in the third, but it's never quite enough to put him down. Is Ponzinibbio the man who can finally capitalize on that and take advantage of it? He's got the pressure style to do it. We're in the small cage, which I think is going to hamper a guy like Pereira. He belongs in the pay-per-view gigantic cage. I think the small cage is a positive for Santiago Ponzinibbio, but Ponz is old, and when they faced off, the size advantage is far more drastic than I expected. Pereira is huge. Looked like he was up there taking a picture with his little brother. Like, I thought that Ponz was going to have a bit more of an equal footing with this man. It's not even close. Like, Pereira's massive. So I'm staying off for now, but I mean, this is one of those ones where, like, don't be surprised if you see me tweet that I jump in on Ponzinibbio if I'm doing okay on the fight night, if I'm cashing tickets and things are going well. Maybe I throw on Ponz last second because I don't really have anything on the back end of this card. I don't have anything. After the Eric Anders fight, I don't have anything. So, yeah, I'm very tempted on Ponzinibbio. Might sprinkle that round 3 on this one, because I do think if there's a guy who's got the veteran savvy to take this fight deep, chop away at the leg kicks, and then take this guy out once he finally slows down, it's a guy like Ponzi that can pull that off. The over 2.5 seems good. I feel like this one's going late and or to a decision, so I don't mind that. But like I said, that round 3 is going to get sketchy. If Ponzi is down 2 rounds, you know he's going for the kill in that third round, and we have seen Pereira falter in that third round. We've seen him damn near give up a 10-8 round before, so just be careful on this one, guys. I know a lot of people with real strong opinions on both sides. I lean Ponzinibbio. I've leaned Ponzinibbio all week. I've had a lot of people who are smart that I respect talking in my ear about Michel Pereira. I can see him winning those first 2 rounds and then just dropping the ball in the third. So just be careful. It's a sketchy card for a reason. Main event, Holm taking on Ketlen Vieira. Holm came in at 135.5, Vieira 136. Holm gave a very solid flex. Classic Holly. She is always in incredible shape. Ketlen Vieira, intense on the scales today. Looked good, no real issues. This was in a really intense face-off. These 2 women did not want to back off of one another. They locked eyes. They almost had to be separated. Like, neither one of them wanted to break first. You love to see it. You love to see the intense face-offs. I like that Holly is bringing that heat at 40 years of age. This is just a spot where Holly is an all-time GOAT to me. Like, you don't beat Holly unless you're a future champion. I'm not convinced that Ketlen Vieira is a future champion at this point. They size up relatively well. Slight size advantage, I think, for Holly Holm. I can't get around Holly Holm at minus 245 being the side here. I wish I'd jumped in earlier. She opened up at like minus 200, so that would have been nice to just get that flat 2-1. I'm trying to find a way to maybe parlay Holly Holm. There's nothing on this card besides the parlay I already made that I really feel super uber confident about. So since I've already used my 2 favorite parlay pieces, maybe I'll parlay Holly Holm with somebody next week. I don't do that a lot. I'm sorry, there's no UFC card next week, but like 2 weeks down the road. I don't do that a lot. That's not a thing I do where I kind of cross the cards over like that with the parlays. I might do that this week because I do want to bet Holly Holm. I'm tempted to load up like 5 units to win 2. Just hammer that money line. Don't make it, at all a sweat. Maybe parlaying her to bring the price tag down. Holly Holm is 40 though. That's kind of the only thing that scares me. She will drop off a cliff one of these days. She will eventually not be the same fighter. I don't see any evidence of her slowing down, though, so I'm not going to count on her slowing down until we start to actually see it in the cage. Maybe that's Saturday. I doubt it. I'm saying Holly Holm. That's the Undefeated Post Weigh-In Show, folks. You got my final thoughts going into the fights tomorrow. Good luck on all your degenerate action. You can find me on social media at DieHardMMAPod. Make sure you comment down below what your favorite bet of the week is, and hit me up if you have any questions. I always love talking with you guys. Good luck. Let's roll.